The vanishing of SS Poet. A maritime enigma, the ocean often serves as a chilling reminder of how even colossal vessels can vanish without leaving a single clue. A ship, its sailors, and its commanding officer completely gone, leaving behind only a trail of baffling questions. Some disappearances at sea are abrupt, swallowed by storms and chaotic waves. Others unfold slowly, oddly. A ship embarks from the harbor with its sailors expecting nothing more than an ordinary passage, then complete silence. No distress signals, no floating wreckage, just a void. In today's world, equipped with cutting-edge communication and tracking tools, it seems nearly unthinkable that a large ship could just disappear. Yet, that is exactly what happened in 1980. That year, a huge American cargo ship named SS Poet departed from Philadelphia, headed toward the Middle East. This was a route the vessel had traveled on many occasions before. But on this occasion, it never made it to its destination. Somewhere in the wide Atlantic Ocean, the Poet vanished. And to this day, the reasons for its disappearance remain unknown. Originally constructed during World War II in 1944, the SS Poet began as a wartime cargo ship. Over time, it was updated and adapted into a bulk freighter used for shipping grain and other commodities around the world. Despite being close to 4 decades old at the time of its final journey, the Poet was still deemed fit for sailing. On the night of October 24, 1980, the ship departed from Philadelphia carrying a load of corn, bound for Port Said, Egypt. On board were 34 crew members, all expecting a simple transatlantic crossing along familiar maritime routes. The ship was in good shape, the skies were clear, and there were no warning signs. The Poet's departure was logged, and the ship made radio contact the next morning. Everything seemed in order. Then, silence. Days slipped by. The ship was expected to check in as it approached the Azores, but nothing came. When the vessel failed to dock in Egypt, concern turned to panic. The U.S. Coast Guard initiated an extensive search across the Atlantic, hoping to find any sign of the missing freighter. But there was no evidence, no distress transmission, no emergency beacons, no debris, only endless water. For such a large vessel to vanish in modern times without any clues was extraordinarily rare. With no answers, theories began to emerge, each more troubling than the last. The most immediate suspicion was the weather. The Atlantic Ocean is infamous for sudden shifts and violent rogue waves, giant, towering walls of water capable of sinking a ship in moments. If the Poet encountered one, it could have gone down too fast for any emergency communication. But even so, why didn't any wreckage or cargo surface? Normally, when a ship sinks, oil slicks, lifeboats, or floating fragments eventually appear. In the Poet's case, nothing returned, no evidence, no floating life rafts, no oil trails. Another scenario involves a catastrophic mechanical failure. Though the Poet had passed inspection, its age meant potential unseen vulnerabilities. A sudden hull fracture or an engine room blast might have flooded the ship instantly, leaving no time for a response. Then there's a far more ominous possibility that the SS Poet fell victim to foul play. Since it was en route to Egypt, some speculated the vessel may have encountered pirates or been the target of a politically motivated attack. The early 1980s were rife with geopolitical tensions. Some believed the ship was intercepted, seized, or deliberately destroyed. Yet, no ransom notes were ever received, and no verifiable evidence emerged to support this suspicion. One of the most unsettling possibilities involves secret military activity. Some suggest that the Poet may have secretly been transporting weapons disguised as corn. If that were the case, perhaps a clandestine force intercepted and eliminated the ship before it could deliver its cargo. However, like the other theories, this idea remains purely speculative. The families of the 34 sailors received no closure, only sorrow. In 1989, Nearly 10 years later, the U.S. Coast Guard officially marked the case as closed, concluding the vessel was presumed lost at sea. But that explanation has never fully satisfied those left behind. To this day, the SS Poet stands as one of the most bewildering maritime disappearances ever recorded. Unlike other ghost ships, where empty vessels or debris are eventually recovered, the Poet left no remains. No floating hull, no abandoned lifeboats. Only a wide, empty ocean where a 522-foot-long ship once sailed. The strange case of the Mary Celeste. A drifting puzzle, the tale of the Mary Celeste remains one of the most disturbing sea mysteries, a reminder of the vast, merciless power of the ocean. A massive cargo ship vanished into myth, with no clear answers, just conjecture and open-ended riddles. But the SS Poet isn't the only vessel to become a ghost of the sea. Some vanish forever. Others resurface under such bizarre conditions that they defy explanation. Few ghost ship legends are as legendary or as confounding as that of the Mary Celeste. Discovered adrift in perfect condition but utterly deserted, there were no signs of violence or disaster. Just a heavy, haunting silence and a mystery that endures over a century later. Launched in 1861, the Mary Celeste was a merchant brigantine, first named Amazon. She was a robust 103-foot ship built for trade across the Atlantic, ferrying goods between Europe and the Americas. But trouble seemed to follow her from the start. Her original captain died on her first voyage. Over the years, she ran aground, collided with another ship, and even caught fire while docked. Some sailors whispered she was cursed, though most chalked it up to misfortune. After changing hands several times, she was renamed Mary Celeste and returned to service. By 1872, she was under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs, a respected sailor. Aboard were his wife, Sarah, their toddler daughter Sophia, and a crew of 7. On November 7, 1872, the ship left New York carrying 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol bound for Genoa, Italy. The journey was expected to be routine, but the ship would never reach Europe. On December 5, 1872, nearly 4 weeks later, the British brig Dea Gratia was crossing the Atlantic when its crew spotted an unusual sight. A ship adrift, its sails flapping in disrepair, tossed by the waves. As the Dea Gratia neared, they saw no one steering. No one was on deck. The Mary Celeste was completely abandoned. Captain David Morehouse of the Dea Gratia was an acquaintance of Captain Briggs. The situation baffled him. Briggs was a competent sailor, not one to desert his ship without cause. A team boarded the Mary Celeste, and what they found made the mystery deeper. The vessel was largely untouched. There was no sign of conflict or piracy. The hull was intact. The cargo was still there, except for 9 empty barrels. The crew's belongings remained in place. A meal sat half-eaten in the galley, as if the sailors had left mid-dinner. Strangest of all, the lifeboat was missing, indicating the crew may have left willingly. But why? There had been no fire, no apparent reason to flee. And the last log entry was dated November 25, 1872, 10 days before the ship was found. What had happened in that time? For more than 150 years, experts have tried to unravel the Mary Celeste mystery. Some offer scientific explanations. Others veer into the supernatural. A leading theory is that the crew feared an explosion. The alcohol in the hold was highly flammable. Some believe fumes may have built up. Perhaps a small blast scared the crew into abandoning ship, expecting a larger detonation. But why didn't they return when the ship stayed afloat? Others propose rare weather phenomena, such as waterspouts, tornado-like storms that form over the sea. A sudden deluge might have convinced the crew the ship was sinking. In panic, they launched the lifeboat, only to be lost in the waves. Another idea points to piracy or mutiny. Perhaps the crew of the DI Gracia seized the Mary Celeste and tried to stage a salvage operation. However, no credible evidence backs this theory, and no one was formally accused. Then there are the more bizarre suggestions that something unnatural occurred. The ocean has long been a source of strange stories, phantom ships, sea creatures, and disappearances. Could the Mary Celeste have crossed paths with something beyond human understanding? Regardless of which theory one believes, one truth remains: the crew vanished without a trace. The ship was later towed to Gibraltar, where an investigation yielded no definitive results. Eventually, the Mary Celeste was resold and resumed service, but she never escaped her eerie legacy. In 1885, her final captain, desperate to rid himself of her misfortune, deliberately ran her aground near Haiti to commit insurance fraud. The scheme failed. The Mary Celeste was left to decay beneath the waves, her ghostly reputation following her to the very end. The enigmatic fate of the SS Ourang Medan. The tale of the SS Ourang Medan stands out as one of the most perplexing maritime mysteries of the 20th century. This Dutch freighter's story begins in the late 1940s, a period rife with post-war uncertainties. While the exact details remain elusive, the most widely accepted account places the ship in the Strait of Malacca, a crucial maritime corridor between Indonesia and Malaysia. The first indication of trouble came when nearby vessels received a distress signal. The message, transmitted in Morse code, was both brief and chilling. All officers, including Captain, dead, lying in chart room and on bridge, probably whole crew dead. I die. Following this transmission, silence ensued. Responding to the call, the American merchant ship Silver Star located the Ourang Medan adrift. Upon boarding, they encountered a harrowing scene. The entire crew was deceased, their faces frozen in expressions of terror, eyes wide open, and mouths agape. Even the ship's dog was found lifeless, its body twisted in apparent fear. Notably, there were no visible injuries or signs of struggle. As preparations were made to tow the ship, smoke began emanating from the lower decks. The crew evacuated just in time before an explosion engulfed the vessel, sinking it and any potential evidence to the ocean's depths. Numerous theories have emerged to explain this tragedy. One posits that the ship was clandestinely transporting hazardous chemicals, such as potassium cyanide or nitroglycerin, which may have leaked and released toxic gases. Another suggests carbon monoxide poisoning from a malfunctioning boiler. More speculative ideas involve supernatural forces or extraterrestrial encounters. However, the absence of official records and the ship's sudden destruction have left the mystery unresolved. The vanishing of the USS Cyclops, a century-old naval enigma. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops in 1918 remains one of the most baffling incidents in U.S. naval history. This massive collier, over 540 feet in length and weighing nearly 20,000 tons, was tasked with transporting coal and later manganese ore essential for steel production during World War I. Departing from Brazil in late February 1918, the Cyclops made a scheduled stop in Barbados before setting course for Baltimore. The journey appeared routine, with calm seas and no reported issues. However, the ship never reached its destination, and no distress signals were received. An extensive search yielded no debris, survivors, or definitive clues. Several hypotheses have been proposed. Structural failure due to the ship's design, combined with the heavy manganese cargo, could have led to a catastrophic breakup. Reports indicate the ship was operating with only one functional engine, potentially compromising its stability. Another theory involves a rogue wave overwhelming the vessel. Speculations about sabotage, mutiny, or enemy action have also been considered, though no concrete evidence supports these claims. Military.com. Adding to the intrigue, two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the USS Proteus and USS Nereus, vanished under similar circumstances during World War II. both carrying heavy metal cargoes in the Atlantic. These incidents have fueled theories linking the disappearances to the Bermuda Triangle, a region notorious for unexplained maritime losses. Despite a century of investigation, the fate of the USS Cyclops and its crew of 306 remains an enduring mystery, emblematic of the sea's unpredictable and enigmatic nature. The tragic tale of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. In the realm of modern maritime disasters, some incidents are well documented, yet their inevitability leaves us unsettled. However, not all vessels leave behind a clear account of their final moments. Some vanish into legend, their last hours cloaked in mystery. Few lost ships have captivated the public imagination quite like the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, a colossal freighter that sank without a single survivor, leaving behind only questions and eerie speculation. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald was no ordinary vessel. Measuring 729 feet in length, it was the largest freighter on North America's Great Lakes when launched in 1958. Constructed to transport iron ore from Minnesota's mines to steel mills in the Midwest, it was a workhorse of the shipping industry, routinely navigating the unpredictable waters of Lake Superior. Despite its industrial role, the Edmund Fitzgerald held a certain prestige. It was the pride of the Great Lakes fleet, earning nicknames like Queen of the Lakes for its impressive size and reputation. The ship's crew took immense pride in their vessel, and over the years, it became one of the most renowned ships to ever sail the inland seas of North America. For 17 years, it operated without major incident. But everything changed on November 10, 1975. That November, the Edmund Fitzgerald was undertaking what should have been a routine trip from Superior, Wisconsin, to a steel mill near Detroit, carrying over 26,000 tons of taconite iron ore pellets, a familiar route it had completed many times before. Captain Ernest McSorley, an experienced mariner, was in command, accompanied by 28 crew members, seasoned sailors accustomed to the challenges of the Great Lakes. However, as the ship departed, an early winter storm was forming, destined to become one of the worst Lake Superior had ever witnessed. By the evening of November 9th, the storm had intensified, bringing massive waves and hurricane-force winds. Another freighter, the Arthur M. Anderson, was traveling the same route and maintained radio contact with the Edmund Fitzgerald. Both captains knew they were in for a rough night, but neither could have predicted the storm's deadly escalation. Throughout the following day, conditions worsened. Waves reached 25 feet and winds howled at nearly 60 miles per hour. The Edmund Fitzgerald took a severe beating, and by mid-afternoon on November 10th, the ship began reporting issues. The storm had torn away railings, water was washing over the deck, and its radar had ceased functioning. Despite this, McSorley remained confident. Around 7:10 p.m., he made his final radio transmission to the Arthur M. Anderson, stating, "We are holding our own." It was the last anyone ever heard from the Edmund Fitzgerald. Just minutes after that final radio call, the Arthur M. Anderson's radar lost contact with the Edmund Fitzgerald. The ship had vanished, without a distress signal, without a call for help, and without any sign of its crew attempting to abandon ship. Rescue efforts commenced immediately, but initially found nothing. No lifeboats, no survivors, no wreckage, just the endless, storm-tossed waves of Lake Superior. Days later, debris, including life buoys and twisted metal, began washing ashore. Weeks later, sonar scans finally located the wreckage. The Edmund Fitzgerald lay at the bottom of Lake Superior in two massive pieces, over 500 feet below the surface. Yet, even with the discovery, the mystery persisted. What exactly had transpired in those final moments? Unlike many shipwrecks, there were no eyewitnesses to the Edmund Fitzgerald's demise, and the ship's sudden disappearance left investigators scrambling for answers. Over the years, several theories have emerged, but none provide a definitive explanation. One widely accepted theory posits that the ship suffered a structural failure. The intense storm, combined with the ship's heavy load, may have caused the hull to crack under pressure. If this occurred, the Edmund Fitzgerald could have taken on water rapidly, sinking within seconds, too quickly for the crew to react. Another theory suggests that the ship ran aground on an uncharted shoal. Lake Superior is riddled with unpredictable underwater terrain, and some experts believe the ship may have struck a submerged obstacle, causing it to flood before breaking apart. There's also speculation that the storm itself was responsible. The Great Lakes are known for producing rogue waves, massive walls of water that can appear without warning. Some believe a wave as high as 35 feet may have struck the Edmund Fitzgerald, forcing it under before it could send out a distress call. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the ship sinking is the absence of recovered bodies. None of the 29 crew members were ever found, leading some to wonder if they went down with the wreckage or were swept away into the cold abyss, lost forever. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald remains one of the most famous shipwrecks in North American history, thanks in part to its mysterious nature and the haunting ballad written about it. In 1976, Canadian musician Garden Lightfoot released The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a song that immortalized the tragedy and introduced the story to millions. Today, the wreck site is a protected grave, and diving expeditions are heavily restricted out of respect for the lost crew. However, in 1995, a team of researchers retrieved the ship's bell from the depths and placed it in a museum as a memorial to those who perished. Despite the passage of time, the questions surrounding the Edmund Fitzgerald remain unanswered. What exactly caused the ship to sink so quickly? Did the crew ever have a chance to escape? Could another ship suffer the same fate in Lake Superior's treacherous waters? One thing is certain: the Great Lakes have always been unpredictable, capable of turning from calm to deadly in the blink of an eye. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald remains a poignant reminder of nature's formidable power. The enigmatic journey of the MV Lyubov Orlova, while the SS Edmund Fitzgerald met its fate in the crushing depths of freshwater. Not all ghost ships end up at the bottom of the ocean. Some are left to drift aimlessly, carried by currents for years, vanishing and reappearing without explanation. One of the strangest cases in recent history is that of the MV Lyubov Orlova, a ship that should have been scrapped but instead became a modern-day ghost ship, lost at sea and possibly still out there, waiting to be found. Built in 1976, the Lyubov Orlova was a Soviet-era cruise ship designed to navigate icy waters. For years, it carried passengers on Arctic expeditions, offering breathtaking views of icebergs and wildlife in some of the most remote regions on Earth. However, as years passed, the once proud vessel fell into disrepair. By the early 2000s, it was no longer in use, sitting abandoned in a Canadian harbor, rusting away, a shadow of its former self. Eventually, the decision was made to scrap the vessel. In 2013, it was towed away from Newfoundland, bound for a scrapyard in the Dominican Republic. But the journey did not go as planned. Not long after departure, in the harsh winter conditions of the North Atlantic, the tow line snapped. The Lyubov Orlova was set adrift, left completely unmanned, floating aimlessly through some of the most unpredictable waters in the world. Canadian authorities briefly recaptured it, only to let it go again, deciding it was no longer their responsibility. From that moment on, the ship was officially lost to the sea, and that's where the mystery truly begins. For months, reports trickled in of possible sightings. The ship was large, difficult to miss, yet no one could confirm exactly where it was. Some speculated it had sunk, dragged down by the rough seas. Others believed it was still out there, drifting further into the open ocean. Without a crew or maintenance, it was a ship without a master, moving wherever the currents would take it. Then came the most disturbing theory: the possibility that the Lyubov Orlova had become infested with rats. Trapped with no food, the rodents aboard would have had to turn on each other, creating a floating, rusting mass of cannibal rats drifting silently across the Atlantic. Despite the bizarre nature of these claims, experts pointed out that the ship could have remained afloat for years. With no official confirmation of its sinking, it became the perfect ghost ship legend. Some feared it might eventually wash up somewhere, a decaying hulk crashing onto an unsuspecting shore. Others believed it could still be out there, carried by the tides, its final fate unknown. Occasionally, reports would emerge of strange radar blips or unidentified vessels spotted in the distance, fueling speculation that the ship had not disappeared at all. Years passed with no confirmed sightings. By now, many assumed the Lyubov Orlova must have finally met its end claimed by the ocean. But with no wreckage, no official sinking, and no evidence to confirm its fate, it remains one of the strangest maritime mysteries of modern times. A ship meant for scrap, lost in the vastness of the Atlantic, left to wander the waves indefinitely. Whether it lies at the bottom of the ocean or continues to drift unseen, its story has cemented itself as one of the eeriest ghost ship tales in history. The haunting enigma of Kaz II and the Carol A. Deering. Ships vanish at sea for many reasons, but certain disappearances disturb us more than others. Some incidents include debris, emergency transmissions, or partial clues that hint at the cause. Then there are rare anomalies, like the mysterious fate of the Kaz II, a yacht discovered in flawless condition, adrift and silent, without a single soul aboard. No signs of distress, no struggle, no explanation, just a lifeless catamaran floating under the sun. On April 15, 2007, the Kaz II, a 32-foot dual-hulled vessel, departed from Airlie Beach in Queensland, Australia. 3 seasoned sailors were on board: 56-year-old skipper Derek Batten and his companions, brothers Peter and James Tunstead, aged 69 and 63 respectively. Their itinerary was a relaxed voyage along the northeastern coastline, with Townsville as their first stop before continuing westward. All 3 were experienced mariners, familiar with the sea's erratic temperament. Their planned path presented no particular hazards, and the weather conditions were favorable. But on April 18th, just 3 days later, a surveillance aircraft flying near the Great Barrier Reef spotted the Kaz II drifting listlessly, approximately 88 nautical miles from Townsville. Something looked off. The sails fluttered slackly, the boat moved passively with the breeze, and no one could be seen on deck. Concerned, authorities sent a search and rescue team to investigate. What they encountered was chilling. The yacht was virtually immaculate. Its engine hummed quietly. A laptop remained open and switched on. In the galley, a meal sat uneaten, and the table was set as though the crew had been about to sit down for lunch. 3 life vests remained on board, untouched. Even more disturbing, all 3 men's personal items, including their wallets and passports, were neatly arranged inside the cabin. The only irregularity was minor tearing on one of the sails. Aside from that, it was as though the crew had simply vanished into thin air. Authorities launched an intensive search effort, sweeping the nearby waters for any trace of Batten and the Tunstead brothers. But no bodies were ever located. No distress messages had been transmitted. No emergency beacons had been triggered. So what had occurred? One widely considered theory is that an unexpected large wave or strong gust may have knocked one man overboard. The others, reacting instinctively, might have tried to help, only to be pulled into the ocean themselves. If events unfolded swiftly, the boat could have continued drifting unattended before any of them managed to reboard. But if this were the case, why hadn't any of them reached for life jackets? Why hadn't one person managed to hang on? Another possibility centers on fishing activity. Investigators noted a fishing line trailing behind the vessel. It's been speculated that one of the crew might have been hauling in a catch and fallen in, prompting the other 2 to leap in after him. If the yacht was still in motion, even a small separation from it might have made it impossible to catch up or climb back on. A less conventional theory proposes a sudden medical crisis, perhaps a heart attack or stroke, triggered panic and confusion, leading to all three men accidentally ending up in the water. Without any eyewitnesses, such a scenario remains pure speculation. Of course, some have ventured into more fantastical explanations. Criminal foul play, sea monsters, or supernatural forces. As captivating as such stories may be, no tangible proof supports them. Ultimately, the Kaz II's vanishing act stands as one of the most bewildering nautical enigmas of modern times. Three competent seamen, gone without a trace, leaving behind a seaworthy vessel that should have brought them safely to shore. Was it an unfortunate accident? A powerful wave? A tragic rescue attempt gone awry? Whatever the truth may be, the Kaz II continues to haunt those who hear its tale, a spectral boat adrift in memory, lost in the vast and unforgiving ocean. But this wasn't the first time a ship returned without its people. The disappearance of the Carol A. Deering, long before the Kaz II, another ship appeared adrift with no one aboard, leaving behind only riddles. The vessel was the Carol A. Deering, a five-masted schooner constructed in 1919 for hauling cargo across international waters. Strong and built for long voyages, by 1920 it had been assigned to deliver coal from Virginia to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Captain William Merritt, a seasoned sailor, began the journey. However, not far into the voyage, he became seriously ill and had to disembark in Delaware, along with his first mate. A new captain, W.B. Wormel, was appointed to take command. Though capable, Wormel was known for his strict nature. Some reports hinted at tension between him and the crew, especially the new first mate, Charles McClellan. Nonetheless, the schooner reached Brazil and completed its delivery successfully. It then began its return to the U.S. in December 1920. That was the last confirmed journey of the Carol A. Deering. On January 31, 1921, the ship was discovered aground near Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Though it had endured some battering from the waves, the vessel remained intact. When Coast Guard personnel boarded, they were met with a ghostly scene. The ship was deserted. There were no bodies, no signs of crew activity, no lifeboats, and no personal belongings. The galley held partially eaten meals. The ship's logbook had vanished. Silence hung heavy on board. Authorities began probing the mystery. Every theory brought more confusion. Pirates were considered, but there were no missing valuables, no damage, and no evidence of struggle. Some suspected a mutiny, citing reported clashes between officers and crew. But if the sailors had rebelled, where had they gone? And why leave the ship so tidy? Another theory proposed that the schooner faced a storm, prompting the crew to abandon it using lifeboats. But why would seasoned sailors forsake a still functional ship during bad weather instead of trying to wait it out? Others pointed to the infamous Bermuda Triangle. The Carol A. Deering had passed through the region before it was found. Though often dismissed as legend, some believe strange forces in the area might have played a role. Perhaps the most unsettling idea is that of a government-related cover-up. Around the same time, another vessel, SS Hewitt, also vanished in the same region under odd circumstances. Some researchers speculate that these ships may have stumbled upon covert operations at sea, perhaps related to illegal activities like bootlegging during Prohibition, or something even more classified. Despite numerous investigations, no definitive explanation ever emerged. The Carol A. Deering remained at the mercy of the waves until it finally broke apart. Her crew, whatever fate befell them, were never seen again. To this day, the Carol A. Deering is remembered as one of the most perplexing sea mysteries, a ship left whole, yet emptied of all life. A ghost vessel with no resolution. And yet, not all lost ships vanish silently into legend. Some are swallowed in catastrophe, their tragic ends recorded, yet still cloaked in uncertainty. One such vessel was the SS Pharaoh. The enigmatic disappearance of the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, The ocean has long been a realm of mysteries, swallowing vessels without a trace and leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Among these perplexing maritime enigmas stands the case of the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a ship that embarked on a routine voyage, only to vanish without a whisper, leaving no survivors or substantial wreckage behind. Originally constructed in 1944 as a T2 tanker named SS Esso New Haven, the vessel was designed to transport oil during World War II. In 1960, it underwent significant modifications to carry molten sulfur, a transformation that involved installing a large, heated tank within its hull. This adaptation, while innovative, introduced structural vulnerabilities that would later be scrutinized. On February 2, 1963, the Marine Sulphur Queen departed from Beaumont, Texas, laden with over 15,000 tons of molten sulfur, destined for Norfolk, Virginia. The crew of 39 experienced mariners had no inkling of the fate that awaited them. 2 days into the journey, a routine radio message was transmitted near Key West, Florida. This would be the last communication from the vessel. When the ship failed to arrive as scheduled, an extensive search operation was launched, covering more than 350,000 square miles of ocean. The search yielded minimal findings: a few life preservers, an oil slick, and some debris, insufficient to determine the ship's fate conclusively. Investigations proposed several theories. One posited that structural failures, exacerbated by the ship's modifications and the corrosive nature of molten sulfur, led to a catastrophic event. Another suggested that the vessel encountered severe weather, resulting in its sudden sinking. Despite these hypotheses, the exact cause remains speculative. The disappearance of the Marine Sulphur Queen remains one of the most baffling maritime mysteries. The ship's final resting place is unknown, and the absence of definitive evidence continues to fuel speculation and intrigue. The tragic voyage of the SS El Faro. In contrast to the enigmatic vanishing of the Marine Sulphur Queen, the sinking of the SS El Faro in 2015 is a maritime disaster with a well-documented sequence of events, yet it remains a poignant reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature. The SS El Faro, a 790-foot cargo ship built in 1975, routinely transported goods between Jacksonville, Florida, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. On September 29, 2015, under the command of Captain Michael Davidson, the vessel set sail on what was expected to be a standard voyage. Unbeknownst to the crew, a tropical storm named Joaquin was intensifying in the Atlantic. Within days, it escalated into a Category 4 hurricane. Despite receiving updated weather information, Captain Davidson maintained the ship's course, bringing it perilously close to the storm's path. On October 1st, the El Faro reported losing propulsion and taking on water. The vessel developed a significant list, and despite the crew's efforts, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The ship sank near the Bahamas, claiming the lives of all 33 aboard. Investigations by the National Transportation Safety Board and the U.S. Coast Guard concluded that the primary causes included the captain's misjudgment of the storm's severity, reliance on outdated weather data, and inadequate response to the escalating emergency. Contributing factors were identified as the ship's aging infrastructure, lack of modern safety equipment, and insufficient corporate oversight. The tragedy of the SS El Faro underscores the critical importance of accurate weather forecasting, responsive decision-making, and stringent safety protocols in maritime operations. It serves as a somber lesson in the perils of the sea and the necessity of vigilance in the face of nature's unpredictability. The SS Valencia, a tale of tragedy and mystery. For generations, mariners have feared the treacherous waters off the Pacific Northwest, a region notorious for sudden storms and perilous reefs. This area, ominously dubbed the Graveyard of the Pacific, has claimed numerous ships. Among these, the SS Valencia stands out as one of the most infamous. Constructed in 1882, the Valencia was a steamship designed for coastal voyages, ferrying passengers and cargo between San Francisco, Seattle, and Alaska. While not the most luxurious vessel of its time, it was considered dependable. However, in January 1906, the Valencia embarked on a voyage that would end in disaster. Departing San Francisco on January 20th, the ship encountered rough weather from the outset. Navigating through dense fog and relying on dead reckoning, the Valencia veered off course. Shortly before midnight on January 22nd, it struck a reef near Vancouver Island's southwest coast, approximately 11 miles southeast of Cape Beale. The impact was catastrophic, tearing into the hull and allowing seawater to flood the lower decks. Panic ensued as the crew attempted to deploy lifeboats amidst the raging surf. Many boats capsized immediately, casting passengers into the frigid ocean. Some survivors clung to the ship's rigging, watching helplessly as waves battered the vessel. Rescue efforts were hampered by the remote location and severe weather, delaying assistance. Of the 173 people aboard, only 37 survived. The rest were claimed by the sea. In the aftermath, eerie tales emerged. Sailors reported sightings of a ghostly ship resembling the Valencia drifting near the wreck site. Others spoke of lifeboats appearing decades later, empty and weathered, floating along the coastline. Local legends even recounted skeletons washing ashore, still wearing decayed life vests, as if the ocean refused to let them rest. The SS Valencia's demise led to significant changes in maritime safety regulations, including the establishment of additional lighthouses and the West Coast Trail to aid in future rescues. Yet the haunting legacy of the Valencia endures, a chilling reminder of the sea's unforgiving nature. High Aim 6, the modern-day ghost ship. Not all maritime mysteries involve shipwrecks. Some vessels vanish without a trace, leaving behind perplexing questions. One such enigma is the High Aim 6, a Taiwanese fishing vessel discovered adrift in the Pacific Ocean under baffling circumstances. Launched from Liuzhou, Taiwan, on October 31, 2002, the High Aim 6 set out with a crew of 10, including its experienced captain, Chen Tai-cheng. The mission was straightforward: catch fish and return home. However, weeks passed without communication, raising concerns. On January 8, 2003, the Australian Coast Guard spotted the High Aim 6 drifting approximately 80 nautical miles east of Rowley Shoals. Upon boarding, authorities found the ship in good condition. The engine was operational, fuel tanks were full, and the hull contained a catch of rotting fish. Personal belongings remained untouched, but the crew was nowhere to be found. Investigations revealed no signs of struggle or distress. The ship's logbook was missing, but the rest of the vessel appeared abandoned in haste. The mystery deepened when calls were traced from the engineer's cell phone in Indonesia, suggesting a possible mutiny. Further inquiries led to the apprehension of an Indonesian crew member who confessed that the captain and engineer had been murdered by fellow crew members. The motive remained unclear, and the rest of the crew vanished without a trace. Despite extensive searches covering over 7,300 nautical miles, no additional clues surfaced. Eventually, the High Aim 6 was towed to Broome, Australia, where it became a temporary tourist attraction. Plans to repurpose the vessel as a dive wreck were abandoned, and in October 2004, it was dismantled and taken to a landfill. The High Aim 6 remains one of the most perplexing ghost ship cases of the 21st century, a fully functional vessel found deserted, its crew missing, and the truth obscured by silence. These maritime enigmas, the tragic sinking of the SS Valencia and the mysterious abandonment of the High Aim 6, the ocean's capacity for both awe and terror. They serve as haunting reminders of the sea's unpredictable nature and the enduring mysteries that lie beneath its surface. The haunting drift of the MV Jian Seng, the vanishing of the USS Cyclops stands as one of the most perplexing sea-bound enigmas ever recorded, an entire vessel and its crew dissolving into obscurity, leaving behind only riddles and guesswork. Yet, while some doomed ships disappear beneath the depths forever, others resurface in ghostly form, adrift, deserted, and shrouded in mystery. These phantom vessels, lacking crew and explanation, are among the ocean's most chilling phenomena. One such maritime enigma emerged in 2006. While patrolling the seas near Queensland, the Australian Coast Guard stumbled upon an enormous freight vessel drifting without aim or purpose. There were no emergency beacons, no evidence of distress, and most hauntingly, no crew members in sight. The ship was identified as the MV Jian Seng, a ghost vessel that should not have been there. To this day, its origins and fate remain as puzzling as they were at the time of its discovery. The MV Jian Seng was initially observed meandering in the remote waters of the Gulf of Carpentaria, a secluded region separating northern Australia and Papua New Guinea. The ship appeared peculiar, an aged, rust-covered tanker lacking any clear registration, identification tags, or hints of recent human presence. At a glance, it seemed to be a neglected cargo ship left at the mercy of nature. However, as authorities neared, it became evident something wasn't right. The vessel was completely unmanned. Its engine was non-operational. There was no visible damage, no clue suggesting where it had come from, nor how long it had wandered. It was as if someone had intentionally deserted the MV Jian Seng, leaving it to drift in solitude like a ghost from the sea. Once on board, officials found almost nothing to illuminate the ship's backstory. The only cargo present was an enormous stash of rice, untouched, cleanly stacked, and oddly pristine. Beyond that, there were no journals, no personal effects, no ship logs, absolutely nothing to trace who had captained it or why they'd vanished. Australian investigators promptly launched a thorough probe. They examined international shipping registries, compared the name with lists of missing vessels, and checked for any maritime records. The outcome? The MV Jian Seng didn't match any known ship. Officially, it had never existed. One of the most confounding aspects was that the ship wasn't in shambles. Though it was aged and corroded, there was no sign it had battled rough seas or experienced a catastrophic event. The presence of such a substantial rice cargo implied that the ship had been active not long before it was discovered, further deepening the mystery surrounding its empty decks. So what might have transpired? One popular hypothesis is that the MV Jian Seng was functioning as a resupply barge, perhaps intended for refueling or cargo transfers between larger vessels. Some theorists suggest it could have been employed in smuggling operations and abandoned once its covert mission concluded. Yet this begs a crucial question. If criminals had used it illicitly, why didn't they destroy it? Why let it drift, leaving behind evidence? Another theory proposes that mechanical issues forced the crew to flee, opting to abandon ship instead of attempting at-sea repairs. If it had floated unattended for weeks or months, vital identification elements could have faded away or been purposely erased. But again, this doesn't explain a crucial detail. There were no emergency calls, no mayday signals, and no missing persons linked to the ship. Some believe it was involved in illegal trafficking or forced labor, operations where crew members may have been deliberately removed or silenced. While there's no definitive proof to validate this claim, the total erasure of the vessel's identity is undeniably suspicious. Despite extensive investigations, the truth behind the MV Jian Seng never surfaced. No one claimed ownership, no survivors came forward, and no paper trail could be found. Eventually, authorities decided to tow the ghost ship away and sink it off the coast of Australia, ensuring it would never haunt the seas again. But even as it slipped beneath the waves, questions lingered. Who had steered this mysterious tanker? Where had it originated? And why was it left alone to roam the ocean like a shadow from another time? The MV Jian Seng remains one of the purest examples of a ghost ship, adrift with no soul aboard, no logs, and no clear history. It seemed to have been lifted from time itself, with its past wiped away by the sea. Yet, while some ghost ships are discovered abandoned, offering silence instead of answers, others disappear completely, never to be seen again. In such cases, not even centuries can uncover the truth behind their fate. One of the most bewildering of these sea disappearances involves the Blenheim, a British merchant vessel that set sail in the early 1800s, only to vanish without a trace. Unlike other lost ships, the Blenheim was not caught in a cyclone, sunk by pirates, or deserted in panic. It simply disappeared, along with one of Britain's most controversial naval leaders. At the center of this case stands Admiral Sir Thomas Masterman Hardy, a legendary figure in British maritime history, best known for his presence at Lord Nelson's side during the Battle of Trafalgar. Though Hardy's name is immortalized in naval lore, it was not he who commanded the Blenheim on its doomed voyage. Instead, that duty fell to another decorated admiral, Sir Thomas Trubridge. Trubridge had enjoyed a long career in the Royal Navy, but by 1807, his fortunes had begun to wane. He was given control of the Blenheim, a 74-gun warship that had since been downgraded to serve as a merchant transport. The vessel, however, was in a dire state, old, battle-worn, and plagued by damage from decades of military service. Despite valid doubts about its ability to endure long travel, the Blenheim was ordered to sail from India back to Britain, making multiple stops along the way. In early 1807, it departed from Madras, accompanied by a second vessel, the Harrier. Their passage was supposed to be uneventful, but once the ships reached the Indian Ocean, they encountered a fierce storm. The Harrier barely survived. When the skies finally cleared, the Blenheim was gone. There were no distress calls, no splinters of wreckage, no survivors. The Blenheim had seemingly been swallowed by the sea. A frantic search ensued, but no signs of the ship were ever located. Some assumed the battered vessel had simply succumbed to the storm's wrath, but others proposed darker possibilities. Admiral Trubridge was known for his authoritarian command style, and whispers spread of mutiny, of a crew so fed up with his harsh methods that they may have seized control of the ship and vanished into the unknown. Adding eerie weight to the rumors were subsequent sailor testimonies. Seafarers later claimed to have seen an aged warship drifting through the region, sails shredded, deck silent, the hull scarred. Yet, when these sightings were followed up, the ship had always disappeared. If the Blenheim truly sank, why was there never any trace? And if mutineers had taken over, where did they escape to? To this day, the Blenheim is remembered as one of the ocean's most baffling vanishments, a warship consumed by time and tide, leaving no explanation in its wake. A true ghost ship.